We've now dealt with the anthropology of the senses and sensory studies. And in this last major section of my retrospective on the various directions of my career, I'd like to talk about research creation. And this word, research creation, it's in some ways unique to the Canadian setting. And maybe the best way in which to illustrate it is by reference to the research creation stream in the humanities, the interdisciplinary humanities doctoral program here at Concordia. In this program, the idea is that a student must both create an installation, artwork, or a performance, and write a thesis. So it's twice as much work as researching and writing an ordinary thesis. You have to create an installation or performance, and you have to write a thesis. Now, the thesis cannot just be an explanation of the artwork, okay? Nor can the artwork just be an illustration of the thesis. Rather, there has to be a dialogue between the two, a conversation, a multimodal conversation. So research creation refers to bringing art and science together. In anthropology, there's a whole wonderfully productive field called between art and anthropology, which is about the same thing. The way in which artists are turning, to anthropology, to ethnography, as a way of documenting their practice. Meanwhile, ethnographers are creating installations and doing performances as a way of conveying their work. A beautiful example of this is the chapters in the book A Different Kind of Ethnography, which is very much in support of this pluralization of the modalities of anthropology. So I've directed quite a number of students in the research creation stream, and also collaborated with a dear friend, Chris Salter, who's a professor of design and computation arts, in the creation of what we call performative sensory environments. Okay, now, a performative sensory environment is like a museum exhibition, only there are no objects. There are only sensations. Okay? And so it's like a film, only it's multisensory. It's not just visual or audio-visual. It's not relying on words so much. So it's not like a monograph. And this is another way of communicating anthropological knowledge. So the first such performative sensory environment, Chris and I put on in 2011 when the American Anthropological Association was in town, and it was called Displace. And there's an image of it here, a still shot from the platform that people could rest on at one point during the 20 minutes that it took them to navigate this huge dark room with a multitude of sensations. Okay, there were flashing lights, there was a synthetic soundtrack, there was a revolving turntable you could stand on, there were scents, there was literally a symphony of sensations. Okay, now normally a symphony is just in sound, right? But what we were doing was transposing senses sort of across and into each other, mixing them up. And the model was actually the synesthetic cosmology of the Dasana Indians of Colombia. It was inspired in part, by the way in which the Dasana, through the use of hallucinogens, experience all of these cosmic sensory transformations and transpositions And so our idea was we would open a crack in the Western sensorium and enable people to step into another sensory universe, if only momentarily, and find out about a culture from within in this kind of way. So that was, and there have been a number of other ones that I won't go into now, but which I describe actually in the last chapter of the Sensory Studies Manifesto. But let me sort of conclude this section by just commenting briefly on another project. This is a project led by Chris Salter called Sensory Entanglements. And there's a team of us. It includes Indigenous and non-Indigenous artists and scholars from Canada and Australia forming this research team. And our objective is to create these performative sensory environments that are spaces for sensory experimentation and enhanced cross-cultural communication. Okay, the idea being that we can create spaces in which are intersensory and also intercultural and aid cross-cultural communication in this kind of way. Well, we've been sidelined by the pandemic and a number of things have been on hold, but we're bringing the project to a conclusion soon. But let me just give you as an example one of the installations that emerged from that. It's a work by Cheryl Lirondelle, who is a Cree and Polish German artist, and she sort of has worked often in Saskatchewan and is based there now. And for this installation it's a performance piece called Light Teepee. What she did was this, and you can see an image of it here. I would encourage you though to watch the short 1-minute video of it that you can actually access by following the link. So again, it's a work by Cheryl Lirondelle, and together with her artistic partner, Joseph Netauau, a Cree elder, also from Saskatchewan, they gathered sage and they made it into bundles. And they brought those bundles and a collection of torches, of flashlights, to a Toronto park in December. And this is a couple of years ago. And a call went out inviting people to come to this park. And so the video, as you'll see, is shot from the park, and you can see the CN Tower in the background. People come, and Cheryl distributes these bundles of sage to them, and also these flashlights. She lights the bundles of sage. So the sage sends up a smoke, and the smoke becomes a screen. Cheryl positions all of the people who are from the dominant settler society in a circle with the flashlights, and they hold the flashlights so that they actually make the form of a teepee. And you have this image of a teepee grafted onto, like a ghost, the skyline of the settler city. And while they're there, Cheryl tells them stories and also sings. She's a marvelous singer with the most powerful drum I've ever heard, and communicates various pieces of Indigenous wisdom. And I see this as a very interesting and important moment in sort of the arts of engagement, which it's incumbent upon us to develop in the wake of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. What this work does is it invites members of the dominant society onto a space, and it positions them. So there's a proprioceptive component to this. They take up the position of holding the flashlights. They become the poles of an Indigenous architectural structure. And the outline of that structure is projected against the backdrop of the settler city. And it's a fragrant spectacle. When you come away from it, you have the smell of sage and it's not going to leave your clothes for a long time. So it's unlike other visual spectacles. Okay, this is a fragrant one, and the fragrance of sage has all kinds of symbolic meanings that we could go into. And it's a multisensory one, and it's a chance for developing proprioceptively an understanding and an opening towards Indigenous society, which is crucial to the whole process, the whole project of conciliation and reconciliation in the society at large.